Hello, this is Gene. I want to talk to you today about the Brett Kavanaugh situation. We find out some new things have happened, and I'm just going to give you my little 2 cents on this because there's something more going on with this whole thing, and I need to talk about how life was in the 1980s. You see, I'm almost the exact same age as Brett Kavanaugh. I'm 53 years old, he's 53. Now, he grew up in an area that, and his privilege is a little bit more than mine, of course. I came, I was not really poor trash, poor white Pratt. Good Lord, I can't even say the word. You might hear some clicking, that's just my car. I had to drop off my kid this morning. And if you ever had a Dodge vehicle, a Hemi, it likes to click afterwards when it's cooling down. So I waited a few minutes, but it's just going to do it. But anyway, like I said, I same age as Brett Kavanaugh. Obviously, I didn't follow or go around his circles, but the party atmosphere that was going on, and the veracity now of these claims against him. Now it's got to the point now that him and Mr. Judge was basically targeting females so they can train them later on. I mean, do the train on them. So basically targeting females, plying them with alcohol, and then later on just having sex with them. I don't know where this goes. I don't think any of it's true to a point. I think that there is truth in it somewhere. And I just want to tell you, as somebody who was part of this, that saw it from the outside, seeing this culture that was going on in school. Again, I don't know that any of this happened. I'm not here to defame Brett Kavanaugh. I don't know enough about him. I trust the fact that Trump decided that he was the right guy for the position. Maybe there's other people that would be more in line with what I believe as far as my immigration policies and stuff. Um, but just to explain some things that happened during that time. Now, I was a wallflower. I was the guy, as you would say, if you looked at back then, there was no thing called the friend zones, but I was the guy, no one talked about it, but I was considered the nice guy, and these girls would come up and talk to me after these parties that they would go to. And they would say things like this happen. Not exactly the same, but let me try to explain it. Um, First of all, before I do this, I just want to say something very clear here. Most of this stuff was done when he was a minor, if it happened. And the same thing with the females in the scenario. However, it's the same thing that we as guys, or the society, still believes that women don't have any agency when it comes to this. When you hear accusations that he was targeting females and getting them drunk and plying them, and that allowed them to be more free with themselves, and then they allowed them to have sex with him. Uh, I'm, the question has to be asked: why are females not? If they're supposed to be so more mature than men at that age, they're supposed to be, but they don't know what's right and wrong, and they still do it. And this is where I want to get into the whole thing about it. Like I said, I was a wallflower. I didn't like people that much because I didn't really trust anybody. Could be because I went through a couple fathers, and this is one of the reasons why girls are like this as well, and we'll get into that as well. But I did go to a couple of these parties, and I would see things like this. I would see these games that he's now being accused of doing. This new accusation saying that there was a drinking game, and this female, Ramirez, thinks that she was targeted at that time to get her more and more drunk, that she would just be allowed to do things. And then apparently there was a plastic dildo out there, but she believes that somehow he put down his pants. Personally, this is not sexual assault. It's boorish behavior. Would I have done it if I was really inebriated back then? I don't know. I can't tell you yes or no what I would do it. But going back to his high school things. Now, just from my point of view, I would always be jealous of the guys that end up scoring with the girls, let's say. And you would know. They would come. They wouldn't necessarily say it, but you knew that they had sex with these women. But you would see the girls come out of the room. Some of them would be okay. Some of them would not be so happy about it. And part of your protection thing is that you want to help these girls, and they would confide in me, and they would say certain things to me. Now, none of those people that I talked to never said they were raped, but they didn't like how it turned out, and the fact that the guy would not call him back the next day, so she would be upset about that. But just from my point of view. Every one of these girls, if they had the opportunity, if they got the call and he showed up in their house, that they would go out with him. I could be sitting there listening to her. We'd go out together. They would still end up going with this guy. It's a very famous movie at that time called Last American Virgins, and it basically shows this culture of females, what they would do back then. And there were a lot of guys now, when they go back, and a lot of these guys are MGTOWs now because they saw how girls don't look at guys that are just nice, that want to support them. They're always trying to look up, and they think that somebody like Kavanaugh probably has a good future in front of them. And of course, they look for the mate that's going to have stuff to protect them, have enough money and all that stuff. This is something that females do, and we talk about a lot on this channel that this is what they do. So I'm talking a lot here, but what I'm trying to get across is there was a culture that doesn't really go on as much anymore, but there's the idea that you would have these parties, and you would have a couple guys like me that would be on the background just watching the shit and watching how the girls would go up with the kids or the other guys, and they come down later on. And when you're talking about targeting females, yes, there was this idea that we knew in high school who the easy girl was, let's say. So those girls didn't have to be really targeted. But there are some people that were targeted, and the first one, Ford, apparently had was kind of, I hate to say the word, but she was a slut in high school, and she did that in college as well. So I don't know what to believe or not to believe. Obviously, when a woman says no, you shouldn't do anything more. But these are things that happen. A young guy, not really good at dealing with lovemaking, is very not good what he does, and she remembers that. I don't like the idea if he really put his hands over her mouth. That's a little bit too far. The other accusations, and the newest one coming from the creepy porn lawyer, saying that this was him and Mark Judge was just targeting females, and then they would take turns on them. Dude, I remember many times that we heard these rumors in schools about girls like this, and almost without fault, all these girls came from fatherless marriages, or the father wasn't in the room at home, or the father was not really being a father. So here, girls still today believing that sex can be a replacement for love or respect, and they just, I had so many conversations with women like this, and I did this almost well into my 20s until I got married. Almost all the girls that I ended up dating was girls that were making mistakes in their life, and some guy actually sit there and listen to them, and they're like, "You're such a good person." But twice in my dating these girls, I didn't have sex with them, but just little kissing here and there, because I believe so much about respecting women that I didn't want to give her any more things to deal with. Both times that I deal with women like this, they end up going back with their boyfriend or whatever, and it's just when it comes right down to it, women are making these choices. And I understand at 20, or excuse me, when you're 17 or 15 or whatever, you want to protect them. And I'm not saying, at this point, if all of it was true, I still don't think it's enough to disqualify him. There was a culture going on during that time. You got to remember, this is the early 1980s, and most of the parents that had these kids, they were 17, 18-year-old kids, were at home taking coke. So people talking about, he was out having drinks, and he was drunk all the time, and he was going to parties all the time. Well, most of the people had parents at home that were on coke all the time. If you had the money, it was kind of like a white man's upper echelon type of drug. People really liked that shit. I'm not saying his parents were on that, but I think that several of the parents of these people that are accusing, or the same group, I'm sure the parents were into that type of shit. So it makes 100% sense that the kids were into it as well. It doesn't necessarily take the responsibility away from him. But all this time that this happened, especially the newest allegation, is that he was basically had this little club that he was doing this shit, him and Mark Judge, that none of these girls ever went to never went to reported it or all that stuff. It was just rumors around that basically he was an alpha, and girls still would show up. They wanted to have his approval. They would drink with him and then maybe have sex with him. Um, I, I saw this all the time, and there is no way now, these guys that I knew in high school, that I would say, that I would think about that 40 years ago, 35 years ago, as disqualifying them from a different having this. Regardless if he was, if let's say there was somebody I knew that was vying for this type of thing, and they were Democrats, and they were liberals, and they were open borders, and they were globalists, and I realized that this happened, that I was a eyewitness of it, I would not come out now and say that this should disqualify him. You change so much between that age and what you are when you're 53 and married and have kids. This is nothing that is not really new. I'm not going to defend him, or I'm not going to be a proponent for that behavior. I remember, again, during that time, I would go home at night and realize there was a point in my life that I realized that in a lot of ways girls need to be not treated this way, but they almost want this. That, of course, they're trying to deal with, they're going through the same type of thing as well, and they don't really know what love really is. And then when a guy is having sex with her, that she somehow believes that that's love, and most times it's not. It's just a physical release for the guy. But the other part is these girls continually go back with these guys, and they do it their entire life. And now, again, I'm not judging the characteristics of these two women that have come out, but they're not very nice looking. I mean, they're average looking girls. And it's a very possibility that these are the same women that didn't get that attention. He somewhat showed that to her, but didn't really follow on it. And they probably held this grudge for a long time. And people will say, Jane, you're just being a misogynist. No, there are a lot of women like this. And I will tell you this, it happened so many times to me. I was a decent looking guy. Eventually when I got past this and I started treating women a little differently, I had a lot more women come in when they realized that they don't want a wallflower. They want somebody that's going to stand up in front of them, that's going to be, I guess, the protector or whatever, and also to stop any other guys that would come in. To sit there and just listen to them all the time and be another girl, that's not what they want. There is a thing that women have. It's called a harem. Guys have it, but the women have it as well. They have a guy that they want to have sex with. Then there's a couple of guys that might be on standby if the other guy is not available. And there are several of the guys that are orbiting around them that they get different things from. Somebody might help pay for her rent. Somebody that actually listens to, the friend zones thing. And I was that type of guy. And eventually I got past that. But there are a lot of guys out there that have to deal with this. So it's one of those weird things. But there's the idea, the culture was there. And I'm sure it was more like on steroids, being where he was, that he was, he went to private school, and he went to where only guys were at, and these girls went to only girl schools. And so when they got together, you have the hormones, and you have a place where they could have drinks and no supervision. And so here we go again. In any of these scenarios, there is no responsibility that we give to women, and every of them. We blame the man when they've known pretty much that a lot of girls, and even guys to that point, need to be somewhat loosen up when it comes to this. When you're trying to maybe at the end of the day have sex with somebody, you sometimes have a couple beers, and it helps women get loosen up. It helps guys be able to be loosen up as well. Me, it was very hard for me. The fear that I had to be rejected stopped me from having probably a lot of sex when I'm in high school. I have a couple of things where women basically threw themselves at them, and I didn't. I was so fearful, and I don't know why that was. Maybe because I lost my fathers early on, or And my mom said you had to be so respectful to women instead of just looking at, and the idea that guys who are 17 don't look at women as objects is foolish. Of course they do, and so do women at some point. They look for a means to the end. There is status of having to be going out with somebody that's in a fast track that's going somewhere if you're a female. And guys, the testosterone and everything going on, we basically want to mate with everybody. And then you fuel that with alcohol. You're going to get this type of thing. And I don't know what happened in those rooms, and the idea that, but the point I'm trying to get across is that this society so much wants to empower women that they want to see how strong they are. But the idea that they're doing now, these 53-year-old women are coming out, or 51-year-old women are coming out basically saying that he did something that were just basically frattish behavior. And that should disqualify this man from being on the Supreme Court, regardless of his politics or what his rulings are. When everybody who's been in these types of scenarios know that this shit was going on. And there were times that I was jealous of guys like this because they had sex all the time. They were seeing girls. They would always knew the girls were coming after them. And once you have that status system, I can't say the word. Other women come out of the woodworks to come after you when they know that all the girls are having sex, or it's one of those weird things. When you don't have any girlfriends and stuff, the girls are never there. But the point comes out that all of a sudden you're having sex and there are girls around you. All the women come in the woodworks to be part of it, and you can watch it. All those movies go in that time, and it's very similar to what these accusations are. So either you believe Kavanaugh, that none of this should happen, that it was overblown, let's say, or you believe the women. But what I actually see is that, depending on what size you're on, it does seem like this is scripted. It looks like this is something that they went to a couple of movies during that time and said, let's see if we can do this and put it into our thing. Because back in the 1980s, nobody would have looked at this as something that's considered not really bad, let's say, but it was something that went on. And they would show that in the movies, and that sometimes the girls would have abortions or something like that. But you would see at the end of the day that these girls would continually go back to the guy which apparently abused them. And as we get later in life, when it comes to what's going on in society right now, they basically think this is just patriarchy and men oppressing women, and that we don't look at women as objects. So this is all something that needs to be stamped out, and he's like the figurehead of it. He ain't different than any other guy that was in that position, that was probably at the top, had his own clique. The girls flocked to that type of shit. Most of them didn't really care about it. Most of the girls that come out and said, yeah, he was very cordial to me. There's a possibility at some point that he stopped drinking and some of this behavior changed. I would think that's probably fair. Out of all the accusations, if this idea that together they contrived this system that they were going to get women drunk and then have sex with them and just go to the next one. This thing that came out, he put out something, because he apparently has a calendar from back then, and he put Friday to 4th and had 5 F's there, and he's like, find him, finger him, fuck him, leave him behind, or some bullshit. Okay. Even if that was true, obviously that was immature and all other bullshit, but there would be more here. And I've said before that these type of things, if you're a true predator, it comes out. And for a long time, I was like, well, all this is this. So apparently, I was going to be okay with it. And now things are starting to trickle out, and we're going to find out more things. And there ain't going to be nobody from the left, or excuse me, for the right, that's going to come out and say he did anything like this. These are all advocates, people that are very liberal. I don't have to go through the latest claim. She doesn't remember anything either. And then she had to go talk to her lawyer for 6 days and then realize maybe he was there in the room. And this is going to get some sort of the same weight of a real accusation. I don't know what we do at this point. The problem that it really hurts is it's going to hurt the Republicans. And, the Republicans, I don't like them either. But You still have to report. You have to vote for him, especially the ones that Trump is supporting, because if you have more Democrats, then the cause is going to be over. This country is not going to be the United States in 50 years. Again, I won't be here, but it's going to be like Brazil, and that's what's coming. And all I'm trying to do is to save the West. Got to remember this: powerful men have a certain type of thing about them that attracts women, and there is this whole thing where women are attracted to it, and there are women who can't get into that little group, and they also have issues as well, and they will hold on to it forever. Both of them can't remember all this shit, but they definitely remember that he was around, and he's a powerful man right now, and this is one way to get back to the reason why she wasn't really with him. I'm not saying both of them, but I believe at least on the first one, I think that she was upset because the next day he didn't really say anything to her if this actually happened, and she didn't like it. And when her own marriage was going to the shit, she brought that out and said, this is one of the reasons why I can't really, I guess, commit, because this guy did this to me. Again, it's one of those weird things that internal thing inside of you wants you to protect women, and I did that early in my adult life. But later on, everybody says that no, all men just we don't want to do this, that we hate women and all that shit. The left continually says this, especially about white men. But that's my instinct to protect them. When women would come up to me and tell me this, because I listened, I wanted to go over and kill that guy. And regardless if they were true with what they were saying to me, because women will just want it for the attention. I mean, this is something you have to understand as well. Everybody talks about male nature and what we do, call it toxic masculinity, but nobody wants to have the other side, what women do, and what they do and how they manipulate and how they lie about shit like this. Let me tell you something. They lie about this shit all the time. They're false accusations all the time. And in their mind, they'll still think that it happened. But they know it didn't happen. But at the end of the day, eventually it may come out, and then guys get out of prison because of it, or you might get them caught on tape saying it never happened. It happened to a guy, Brian Banks. It's, in my experience, it's about 50-50 when it comes to this. And again, I think this is probably what we got right here. I think it's a really good chance that at some party that he might have done that. He might have exposed himself. There were a lot of guys that did that shit. I did it. I didn't do it, but there are people when I was in the military, when I was in my 20s, that at night having parties, all drinking, guys running around with nothing on, girls come out with nothing out. You know, the girls would go with the guy, and hey, where's so-and-so going? And then she would come out with nothing on, and we all were laughing at each other. But now this is sexual assault, or this is something more. Again, if there's any credible evidence that Mark Judge and himself were setting up this thing where they raped girls, and there's something to this, then he shouldn't be the nominee. He shouldn't be. Regardless, it was 50 years or 35 or 60, whatever, years ago. That's just, that can't be done. These other things, it doesn't change how I feel about that at all. But the conversation has to happen. We continually emphasize, I can't say the word, make women like women, or like little kids, instead of treating them as legal adults when it comes to this. And when we still, these women are looked at, they can't deal with any questioning. These are 50-year-old men or women, can't deal with somebody asking a question. Like, anyway, I know I've talked a lot. I don't know if I really got my point across, but basically this: there was a culture going at that time. I said I'm the same age as he is. There was a clique of guys and girls that did shit this all the time. They had sex all the damn time. Girls would want to get into that when they were on the outside. They would feel jealous of that, and they would get inside. There were guys that did things that probably went too far. Again, I'm not saying Brett did shit like that. I saw the stuff looking out, and I got the end of it. I got the aftermath of it. And like I said, I probably had 100 conversations of girls like this after this. and nobody ever said that they were raped. They knew that they made bad choices. Not at first, but later on they did. And then when I was 25, and then they hit me up on some sort of social media, they'd say, I can't believe how good person you were, how of a nice person you were. I wish I would have been around with you and, you know, been your boyfriend, all that shit. Yeah, they say that now when their life is, you know, when their wall is coming up and they realize that there's nothing left for them. Because guys look at it that way. Take you, whatever what we are, that's how we are. Women hit their wall around 30, and guys can just look good at 40 or 50 and still pull a girl in their 20 or 25, you know. So anyway, let me know below what you think. Anybody have any questions for me? I could go into further about this, the things that I saw. Again, none of those friends, I wouldn't call them friends, but acquaintances that I had in high school, turned out to be rapists. None of them became serial rapists or anything like that. It was something that was done, and it was done by guys and girls that were just going through the whole thing, trying to be accepted, and they're on their own chemical high when it comes from hormones, and want to be accepted and loved and all that stuff. And how women look at love and how men look at love at that age, it's a little different. Kind of like gets back together when they're older, but at that point, guys are just looking to have sex. Girls are trying to just fit in, and sometimes you equate sex with love, and that causes problems. But there's more here. I just wish that we say that women have their own agency in this. If we as a society could actually say this, instead of just trying to protect women like they can't deal with shit like this, because real sexual assault should be punished, should be looked in, and survivors should be listened at. There's nobody. The two that's come out, these are not survivors of anything. I'm sorry that you were in a prank and you saw a plastic dildo and that scarred you for life. That's not sexual assault. And until I know more for the first one, I'm sorry, some guy groping you when you're both drunk and you're on a bed somewhere, that's not sexual assault either. It just isn't. It's just bad stupidity shit from both sides. She has choices, he had choices, if that happened. Anyway, let me know what you think below, and we'll talk about it in the comments. Thank you for watching, and have a good day. Bye.